In a sprawling city where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and luxury cars lined the streets, life moved at a relentless pace. Amidst this world of glamour and wealth lived Emma, a hard-working cleaning lady who spent her days scrubbing floors, dusting shelves, and polishing surfaces in some of the most extravagant homes in town. Though her job was humble, Emma had an extraordinary gift. She could read people like an open book. Over years of observing body language, tone of voice, and subtle expressions, she had developed a knack for spotting trouble before it even surfaced. Every morning, Emma would wake up early, put on her worn-out uniform, and head to work. She didn't have much, a small rented room, a few clothes, and just enough money to get by. But she took pride in her job. Her clients were wealthy, important people, business tycoons, celebrities, politicians. To them, Emma was invisible, someone who blended into the background while they went about their lives. But Emma saw everything, their secrets, their fears, their lies. And though she rarely spoke about what she noticed, she carried those observations with her, tucked away in the corners of her mind. One chilly autumn morning, Emma arrived at the penthouse apartment of Richard Caldwell, one of the richest men in the city. The elevator doors slid open to reveal a breathtaking space filled with gleaming marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and artwork worth millions. It wasn't unusual for Emma to feel out of place here. The sheer opulence of Richard's home always made her feel like an outsider looking in. Still, she set to work without hesitation, pulling out her cleaning supplies and starting her routine. As she worked, Emma couldn't help but notice something strange. Richard, usually calm and composed, seemed unusually restless. He paced back and forth across the living room, his phone pressed tightly to his ear, his brow furrowed, and his voice carried a tension that Emma hadn't heard before. When he finally hung up, his wife, Victoria, walked into the room. Dressed in designer clothes and wearing perfectly applied makeup, she looked every bit the picture of elegance. But there was something unsettling about her demeanor. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, and she kept glancing nervously at Richard as if waiting for him to say something. Emma tried to focus on her tasks, moving quietly from one corner of the room to another. But as she wiped down the coffee table, she overheard fragments of their conversation. They were talking about a trip, a weekend getaway to a secluded mountain resort. At first glance, it sounded romantic, the kind of luxurious escape couples dream about. But the more Emma listened, the more uneasy she felt. Richard sounded hesitant, almost reluctant, while Victoria's tone grew sharper, more insistent. "You promised we'd go," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "Don't back out now." Something about the exchange struck Emma as odd. She paused mid-task, pretending to adjust the furniture so she could listen closer. Richard muttered, something under his breath, too low for Emma to catch, but Victoria's response was clear. "If you don't come, I'll make sure you regret it," she snapped before storming out of the room. The words sent a chill down Emma's spine. Regret? What did that mean? Was it just a heated argument between husband and wife, or was there something darker lurking beneath the surface? Later that afternoon, after finishing her work, Emma hesitated before leaving. Normally, she wouldn't dare interfere in her clients' personal lives. It wasn't her place. But today, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Taking a deep breath, she approached Richard, who was sitting alone in his study, staring blankly at his laptop. "Excuse me, sir," she began softly, clutching her cleaning cloth tightly in her hands. I don't mean to intrude, but can I say something?" Richard looked up, surprised. He wasn't used to his staff speaking out of turn, especially not someone like Emma. "What is it?" he asked, his tone polite but guarded. Emma swallowed hard, her heart pounding in her chest. "Please reconsider traveling with your wife this weekend," she said quickly, the words tumbling out before she lost her nerve. "I know it's none of my business, but sometimes we ignore signs because we trust too much. Just think twice, okay?" For a moment, Richard stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then he chuckled dismissively. "It's just a vacation," he said, waving her off. "You're worrying over nothing." But despite his casual response, Emma could see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. Deep down, her warning had planted a seed of suspicion. That night, as Emma lay in bed replaying the day's events in her mind, she couldn't shake the image of Richard's troubled face. Had she done the right thing by speaking up? Or had she simply embarrassed herself by sticking her nose where it didn't belong? Sleep eluded her as she wrestled with these thoughts, unsure whether her instincts were leading her astray or guiding her towards something important. Little did Emma know, her simple act of courage was about to set off a chain of events that would change not only Richard's life, but hers as well. As dawn broke the next morning, neither of them could have imagined the twists and turns that awaited them, or the role a mysterious gift would play in unraveling the truth. And so, the stage was set for a story that would blur the lines between ordinary and extraordinary, proving that sometimes the smallest voices carry the greatest power. For now, however, Emma remained unaware of the storm brewing in the shadows, her quiet determination lighting the way forward, one uncertain step at a time. The next morning, as Emma walked to her usual bus stop, she couldn't shake the weight of what she had done. Her bold warning to Richard Caldwell lingered in her mind like an unfinished melody. Had she overstepped? Was it foolish to meddle in the affairs of someone so far removed from her own world? She replayed their brief conversation in her head, cringing at how awkward and unpolished her words must have sounded. Yet, deep down, she knew she couldn't stay silent. Not when every instinct screamed that something was wrong. Meanwhile, Richard woke up to a crisp autumn day, his thoughts heavy with confusion. The cleaning lady's warning had seemed absurd at first, a paranoid intrusion into his private life, but as the hours passed, it gnawed at him. He wasn't used to questioning Victoria's intentions. They'd been married for nearly a decade, and though their relationship had its ups and downs, he trusted her implicitly, or at least he thought he did. Now doubt crept in like a shadow, darkening corners of his mind he hadn't dared explore before. As he prepared for the day, Richard stepped out onto the balcony of his penthouse to clear his head. That's when he saw it. A sleek, brand new, luxury car parked neatly outside his mansion. Its polished surface gleamed under the morning sun, a stark contrast to the quiet elegance of his surroundings. A small envelope rested on the windshield, fluttering slightly in the breeze. Curious, Richard hurried downstairs to investigate. He opened the envelope and pulled out a handwritten note. "You deserve better decisions." The message was cryptic, yet strangely compelling. Who could have sent this, and why? His mind raced through possibilities, but one name kept surfacing: Emma. It had to be her. No one else had interacted with him recently in such an unusual way. Frowning, Richard grabbed his phone and dialed her number. Emma froze when she heard Richard's voice on the other end of the line. "Is this Emma?" he asked, his tone sharp but controlled. "Yes, sir," she replied hesitantly, clutching the phone tightly. "I received a gift this morning, a car. Did you send it?" There was no point denying it. "Yes, sir," Emma admitted quietly. "I hope you don't think I'm being disrespectful. I just wanted to remind you to trust your instincts." Richard sighed, torn between frustration and curiosity. "Why would you do something like this? You barely know me, Lee." "I may not know you personally," Emma said firmly, "but I've seen enough in my line of work to recognize trouble when I see it. Please, sir, reconsider traveling with your wife. Trust me, it's not safe." Her conviction startled him. Most people avoided confrontation, especially those in positions far beneath his own. But Emma spoke with a confidence that bordered on defiance, as if she truly believed her words mattered. For a moment, Richard considered brushing her off again, dismissing her as overly imaginative or meddling. Yet, something about her sincerity stopped him. Perhaps it was the urgency in her voice, or the fact that she risked angering him to deliver her message. Whatever it was, it planted a seed of unease in his heart. After hanging up, Richard spent the rest of the day distracted. He tried to focus on work, reviewing contracts and attending meetings, but his mind kept drifting back to Emma's warning. By evening, unable to shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial, he decided to take a closer look at Victoria's recent behavior. That night, while Victoria slept soundly beside him, Richard slipped out of bed and retrieved her phone from the nightstand. Guilt clawed at him as he unlocked it. This wasn't something he'd ever done before, but his growing suspicion outweighed his hesitation. What he found left him reeling. Dozens of messages exchanged between Victoria and an unknown man revealed a chilling plan. They weren't discussing romance or relaxation. Instead, they talked about isolating Richard during the trip and staging an accident involving his car. Details were vague, but the intent was clear: to eliminate him permanently. Richard's hands trembled as he scrolled through the texts. Each word felt like a knife twisting deeper into his chest. How long had Victoria been plotting this? Why? The questions swirled endlessly in his mind, leaving him nauseous and disoriented. He returned the phone to its place and sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly into the darkness. Everything he thought he knew about his marriage crumbled around him. The next morning, Richard canceled the trip, citing a sudden business emergency. Victoria reacted with thinly veiled irritation, pressing him for details, but he remained evasive. Over the following days, he began gathering evidence against her, enlisting the help of private investigators to dig deeper into her activities. What they uncovered confirmed his worst fears. Victoria had been conspiring with her lover to orchestrate Richard's death for months. Money was the motive, his vast fortune, and she was willing to go to any lengths to claim it. While Richard grappled with betrayal and anger, Emma continued her routine, blissfully unaware of the chaos she had inadvertently triggered. She cleaned houses, ran errands, and lived her quiet life, never imagining the ripple effect of her actions. One afternoon, as she dusted shelves in another client's home, the doorbell rang. Expecting it to be a delivery person, Emma opened the door and froze. Standing there was Richard Caldwell himself, looking both relieved and shaken. "Emma," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "I need to thank you." She blinked in surprise. "Thank me, sir? For what?" "For saving my life," he replied earnestly. "Your warning, it wasn't paranoia. It was real. Victoria, she was planning to kill me." Emma's eyes widened in shock. She had suspected something sinister, but hearing it confirmed was surreal. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Yes," Richard nodded grimly. "I found messages on her phone, plans, evidence. Without your intervention, I might not be standing here today." Overwhelmed by gratitude, Richard insisted on rewarding her. "Name anything," he urged. "Money, a house, whatever you want. You saved my life. I owe you everything." But Emma shook her head firmly. "I didn't do it for money, sir," she said simply. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. We all have a responsibility to speak up when we see danger. Though she refused material compensation, Richard refused to let her kindness go unrecognized. Instead of giving her cash, he established a scholarship fund in her name to support underprivileged children pursuing education. For Emma, this gesture meant more than any amount of money ever could. It validated her belief that doing the right thing always mattered, regardless of the risks involved. As news of Emma's involvement spread, whispers rippled through the neighborhood. Some praised her bravery, calling her a hero. Others criticized her for interfering in matters that didn't concern her. But Emma paid little attention to the chatter, focusing instead on continuing her work with renewed purpose. Her courage inspired those around her, reminding them that even the smallest voices could spark change. For Richard, the revelation marked the beginning of a new chapter. He filed for divorce and took legal action against Victoria, ensuring she faced consequences for her crimes. Free from the toxic relationship, he dedicated himself to rebuilding his life and giving back to society. Inspired by Emma's humility, he became a philanthropist, funding projects aimed at improving the lives of those less fortunate. And so, two lives intertwined briefly, forever altered by a single act of courage. Neither Emma nor Richard could have predicted the outcome of their encounter, but both emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to make a difference. Little did they know, their story was only beginning to unfold, setting the stage for lessons about trust, integrity, and the power of speaking up, even when no one asks you to. The days following Richard's discovery were a whirlwind of emotions, anger, betrayal, and disbelief. He had always prided himself on being a rational man, someone who approached life with logic and precision. Yet here he was, blindsided by the very person he trusted most in the world. Victoria's betrayal cut deeper than any financial loss or professional failure ever could. It wasn't just about the money. It was the calculated deceit, the cold-blooded planning that made his stomach churn. Richard spent hours locked in his study, poring over the evidence collected by the private investigators. The more he read, the angrier he became. Text messages, emails, even voice recordings, it was all there, painting a horrifying picture of Victoria's intentions. She hadn't acted alone either. Her lover, a man named Daniel whom Richard vaguely remembered meeting at a charity gala, was deeply involved. Together, they had meticulously plotted every detail, from isolating Richard during the trip to ensuring his accident looked plausible enough to avoid suspicion. Despite the overwhelming proof, Richard struggled to reconcile this side of Victoria with the woman he had married. How could someone so charming, so poised, harbor such malice? He replayed memories of their time together, searching for clues he might have missed. There were moments, small, fleeting instances, that now seemed glaringly obvious. The way she would insist on traveling separately, claiming work commitments, the late-night phone calls she took in hushed tones, the sudden interest in updating his will. All signs pointed to one conclusion. She had been planning this for months, maybe even years. But as much as Richard wanted to confront her immediately, he knew better. Acting impulsively would only tip her off, giving her and Daniel time to cover their tracks. Instead, he decided to play along, pretending everything was normal, while quietly building an ironclad case against them. He hired a top-tier legal team and began documenting every interaction with Victoria, no matter how trivial it seemed. Every conversation, every argument, every glance. It all became part of the puzzle he was piecing together. Meanwhile, Emma continued her daily routine, blissfully, unaware of the storm brewing around Richard. Her encounter with him lingered in her mind, but she tried not to dwell on it. After all, what was done was done. She had spoken up because her conscience demanded it, and now it was up to Richard to decide what to do next. Still, she couldn't help but wonder if her warning had truly made a difference. Had he listened, or had she simply embarrassed herself without achieving anything meaningful? One afternoon, as Emma cleaned a client's kitchen, her phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for trusting your instincts. Justice is coming." Confused, Emma stared at the screen, unsure who had sent it. Was it Richard? If so, why didn't he use his own number, or was it someone else entirely? The message unsettled her, but she quickly dismissed it as irrelevant and returned to her work. Back at his penthouse, Richard was preparing for the next phase of his plan. He needed to gather irrefutable evidence, not just for himself, but for the authorities. He couldn't risk Victoria slipping through the cracks of the justice system. With the help of his legal team, he set up a sting operation. Using a burner phone, he contacted Daniel under the guise of discussing the upcoming trip. Their conversation was brief, but telling. Daniel unknowingly revealed key details about the plot, confirming everything Richard already suspected. Armed. With this new information, Richard handed over the entire dossier to the police. Within days, warrants were issued for both Victoria and Daniel's arrests. The news hit the city like a bombshell. Headlines blared with shocking revelations about the billionaire's wife and her sinister plans. Social media erupted with speculation, and talk shows dissected every aspect of the scandal. For once, Emma's quiet neighborhood wasn't immune to the gossip. Neighbors gathered in huddles, whispering about the drama unfolding in the upper echelons of society. It wasn't long before the truth reached Emma's ears. One of her clients casually mentioned the story during a cleaning session, unaware of Emma's connection to it. "Did you hear about Richard Caldwell?" the woman asked excitedly. "His wife was trying to kill him. Can you believe it?" Emma nodded slowly, feigning surprise. "That's terrible," she murmured, keeping her expression neutral. Inside, however, her heart raced. So her warning had mattered. She had played a role in exposing Victoria's treachery, albeit indirectly. The realization filled her with a mix of pride and unease. Pride, because she had done the right thing. Unease, because she knew the spotlight could easily turn on her. As the investigation unfolded, Richard made a bold decision. He invited Emma to meet him again, this time at a cafe near her neighborhood. When she arrived, nervous and unsure of what to expect, he greeted her warmly. "I owe you more than words can express," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You saved my life, Emma. I'll never forget that." Emma shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I only did what anyone would have done," she replied modestly. "No," Richard countered firmly. "Not everyone would have had the courage to speak up. You saw something wrong and acted on it. That takes guts." Their conversation turned to the aftermath of the scandal. Richard explained how he planned to move forward, focusing on rebuilding his life and helping others. Inspired by Emma's selflessness, he announced his intention to become a philanthropist, dedicating a portion of his wealth to causes close to her heart. Education, healthcare, and women's empowerment topped the list. "You reminded me that true success isn't measured by how much money you have," he said. "It's about making a difference." Emma listened intently, humbled by his words. Though she still refused personal compensation, she agreed to collaborate with him on charitable projects. Together, they launched initiatives aimed at uplifting marginalized communities, starting with the scholarship fund in her name. News of their partnership spread quickly, earning praise from locals and national figures alike. For many, it was a refreshing change. A wealthy man using his resources not for selfish gain but for genuine good. Yet, not everyone viewed Emma's actions favorably. Some accused her of meddling, arguing that she had overstepped boundaries by involving herself in her employer's affairs. Others questioned her motives, suggesting she sought fame or fortune, but Emma remained unfazed by the criticism. She understood that people would always judge, regardless of her intentions. What mattered most was staying true to herself and knowing she had done the right thing. In the weeks that followed, Emma noticed subtle changes in her life. Clients treated her with newfound respect, some even going out of their way to thank her for her hard work. Strangers approached her on the street, eager to share their admiration. Local schools invited her to speak at events, hoping to inspire students with her story. At first, the attention overwhelmed her. She wasn't used to being in the limelight, preferring the quiet anonymity of her job. But over time, she embraced her role as an advocate, using her platform to raise awareness about domestic issues and encourage others to trust their instincts. For Richard, the scandal marked a turning point. Divorced and free from Victoria's toxic influence, he dedicated himself to creating a legacy rooted in kindness and integrity. His transformation inspired those around him, proving that even the wealthiest individuals could find purpose beyond material wealth. Together, he and Emma formed an unlikely alliance, united by their shared belief in the power of doing good. And so, two lives intertwined by fate forged ahead, forever changed by a single act of courage. Neither Emma nor Richard could have predicted where their paths would lead, but both emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined to make a difference. Little did they know their journey was far from over. New challenges awaited them, testing their resolve and deepening their bond. But for now, they stood side by side, ready to face whatever came next, with hope, resilience, and unwavering faith in the goodness of humanity. As weeks turned into months, the ripple effects of Emma's intervention continued to unfold, touching lives far beyond what she or Richard could have imagined. The scandal surrounding Victoria Caldwell dominated headlines for weeks, sparking debates about trust, greed, and the darker sides of wealth. While some criticized Emma for her involvement, many others hailed her as a hero, a symbol of courage and integrity in a world often driven by self-interest. For Emma, life became a delicate balancing act. On one hand, she cherished the newfound respect and opportunities that came her way. Schools invited her to speak at assemblies, community centers asked her to lead workshops, and local charities sought her advice on outreach programs. Her story resonated deeply with people from all walks of life, especially women who felt trapped in toxic relationships or situations where speaking up seemed impossible. Emma's message was simple yet powerful. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. On the other hand, the attention sometimes felt overwhelming. Emma wasn't used to being in the spotlight. She preferred the quiet rhythm of her days, cleaning houses, listening to music on her headphones, and enjoying solitary evenings in her small rented room. Now, strangers recognized her on the street, eager to shake her hand or snap a photo. Reporters occasionally showed up at her doorstep, asking for interviews or exclusive details about her encounter with Richard. Though flattered, Emma politely declined most requests, choosing instead to focus on her work and the causes she cared about. Richard, too, found himself navigating uncharted territory. After decades of living under the shadow of his family name and fortune, he suddenly became a public figure in a different light, one associated with resilience and redemption. He gave several interviews, not to boast about his wealth, but to share lessons learned from his harrowing experience. "Money can't protect you from betrayal," he told audiences during a televised talk show. "But trust, honesty, and kindness, they're the real treasures." His transformation inspired admiration, but it also drew skepticism. Critics accused him of using the scandal to polish his image, claiming his philanthropic efforts were nothing more than a PR stunt. To silence these doubts, Richard doubled down on his commitments. He personally visited schools, hospitals, and shelters funded by his initiatives, ensuring they met the highest standards. He collaborated closely with Emma, consulting her on projects aimed at empowering marginalized communities. Together, they created programs that provided vocational training, mental health support, and educational scholarships to those in need. One such initiative was particularly close to Emma's heart, a safe house for women escaping abusive relationships. Having witnessed countless signs of domestic turmoil throughout her years as a cleaning lady, Emma understood the importance of providing refuge and resources to survivors. When Richard proposed funding the project, she threw herself into its development, working tirelessly alongside social workers and activists to bring the vision to life. The safe house opened its doors 6 months after the scandal broke, offering counseling, job placement services, and legal assistance to women rebuilding their lives. Though the project garnered widespread praise, it also brought challenges. Some donors withdrew their support, citing concerns about associating with controversy. Others questioned whether Emma, a woman without formal education or professional credentials, was qualified to oversee such a significant undertaking. But Emma refused to let criticism deter her. "I may not have degrees or titles," she said during a press conference, "but I know what it means to see pain and suffering up close, and I believe everyone deserves a chance to start over." Her determination earned her allies in unexpected places. Local business owners donated supplies and furniture for the safe house. Volunteers signed up to teach classes or mentor residents. Even former clients of Emma's, wealthy individuals who had once dismissed her as just a cleaning lady, contributed generously to the cause. Slowly but surely, the safe house became a beacon of hope for women seeking freedom and independence. Meanwhile, Richard faced his own set of hurdles. Legal proceedings against Victoria dragged on, complicated by her team of high-profile attorneys. They argued that the evidence against her was circumstantial, insisting she deserved the benefit of the doubt. Public opinion swayed back and forth, with some sympathizing with Victoria as a victim of circumstance and others condemning her outright. For Richard, the trial was emotionally exhausting. Reliving the betrayal day after day took a toll on his mental health, forcing him to seek therapy for the first time in his life. Through it all, Emma remained a steady presence in his corner. Though their relationship stayed strictly professional, they developed a deep mutual respect. Richard admired Emma's humility and unwavering moral compass, qualities he realized he had lacked in his earlier years. In turn, Emma appreciated Richard's willingness to grow and change, even when it meant confronting uncomfortable truths about himself. Their collaboration extended beyond charity work. Richard began attending community meetings organized by Emma, learning firsthand about the struggles faced by working-class families. He listened intently as neighbors shared stories of financial hardship, inadequate health care, and systemic inequality. These conversations opened his eyes to realities he had previously ignored, shaping his approach to philanthropy in profound ways. No longer content with simply writing checks, he rolled up his sleeves and got involved, volunteering at food banks, mentoring young entrepreneurs, and advocating for policy changes at the city council level. As their individual journeys progressed, both Emma and Richard discovered new facets of themselves. Emma, once hesitant to step outside her comfort zone, embraced leadership roles with surprising confidence. She spoke at conferences, wrote op-eds for newspapers, and served on advisory boards for nonprofit organizations. Her story inspired others to take action, proving that heroism isn't limited to grand gestures. It often lies in quiet, persistent acts of kindness. Richard, meanwhile, shed the armor of privilege that had long shielded him from vulnerability. He learned to connect with people on a human level, valuing authenticity over appearances. His friendships deepened, his priorities shifted, and his sense of purpose grew clearer with each passing day. For the first time in his life, he felt truly fulfilled, not because of his wealth or status, but because he was making a tangible difference in the world. Yet, despite their successes, neither Emma nor Richard forgot the fragility of trust. They knew how easily it could be shattered, how quickly illusions of safety could crumble. This awareness fueled their commitment to creating systems and spaces where transparency, accountability, and compassion thrived. Whether it was through the Safe House, scholarship programs, or advocacy campaigns, they worked tirelessly to ensure no one else would suffer in silence. By the end of the year, their combined efforts yielded remarkable results. Hundreds of women found refuge in the Safe House, dozens of students received scholarships to pursue higher education, and countless families benefited from improved access to health care and employment opportunities. Their partnership became a model for effective collaboration between individuals from vastly different backgrounds, proving that shared values could bridge even the widest gaps. Still, challenges loomed on the horizon. Funding shortages threatened to derail ongoing projects while political resistance hindered progress on key reforms. But Emma and Richard refused to give up. They rallied supporters, rallied resources, and rallied hope, determined to keep pushing forward no matter the obstacles. And so their journey continued, a testament to the power of courage, empathy, and perseverance. Through trials and triumphs, setbacks and breakthroughs, they reminded the world that true strength lies not in title or wealth, but in the ability to lift others up. Little did they know, their story was far from over. New adventures awaited them, testing their resolve and deepening their bond. But for now, they stood side by side, united by a shared mission to leave the world better than they found it. As the new year dawned, Emma and Richard found themselves at a crossroads. Their charitable initiatives had gained momentum, earning them recognition not just locally but nationally. Yet, with success came challenges that neither of them had anticipated. The weight of responsibility grew heavier with each passing day, testing their resolve in ways they hadn't foreseen. For Emma, the pressure was particularly intense. She had always been a private person, content to live her life quietly behind the scenes. But now she was thrust into the spotlight, expected to deliver speeches, attend galas, and network with influential figures. At first, she struggled to adapt. Public speaking terrified her. The thought of standing before hundreds of people made her palms sweat and her voice tremble. But over time, she learned to channel her nervous energy into passion. Her speeches became heartfelt appeals for empathy and action, resonating deeply with audiences who admired her authenticity. One evening, after delivering a keynote address at a charity gala, Emma received a standing ovation. As she stepped off the stage, a young woman approached her, tears streaming down her face. "You saved my life," the woman whispered, clutching Emma's hand tightly. "Your safe house gave me a second chance when I thought there was no way out." Emma blinked back tears of her own, overwhelmed by the gratitude in the woman's eyes. It was moments like these that reminded her why she kept pushing forward despite the challenges. Every thank you note, every hug, every story of survival reinforced her belief that their work mattered. No matter how exhausting or daunting it became, she couldn't give up, not when so many lives depended on her. Richard, too, faced his share of difficulties. While he thrived in high-profile settings, navigating the intricacies of philanthropy proved more complex than he had imagined. He quickly realized that throwing money at problems wasn't enough. Real change required patience, persistence, and an understanding of systemic issues far beyond his personal experience. To bridge this gap, he immersed himself in research, attending seminars, reading books, and consulting experts. He also leaned heavily on Emma's insights, valuing her first-hand knowledge of the struggles faced by ordinary people. Their partnership evolved into something deeper than mere collaboration. It became a friendship built on mutual respect and shared purpose. They spent hours brainstorming ideas, debating strategies, and troubleshooting obstacles. Richard marveled at Emma's creativity and resourcefulness, qualities he admitted he lacked. In turn, Emma appreciated Richard's determination and willingness to learn. Together they complemented each other's strengths, creating solutions neither could have devised alone. Despite their progress, external forces threatened to derail their efforts. Funding shortages loomed large as economic uncertainty gripped the nation. Donations dwindled, forcing them to make tough decisions about which programs to prioritize. Political resistance posed another hurdle. Some policymakers viewed their initiatives as unnecessary interference, questioning whether private citizens should wield such influence over public welfare. Critics argued that Emma and Richard were overstepping boundaries, using their privilege to impose their ideals on others, but instead of backing down, they fought harder. Richard leveraged his connections to secure corporate sponsorships, hosting fundraising events that drew celebrities and business leaders alike. Emma mobilized grassroots support, rallying volunteers and organizing community drives to raise awareness and resources. Their combined efforts breathed new life into struggling projects, ensuring they continued to serve those in need. Amidst the chaos, personal growth remained a constant theme. For Emma, stepping outside her comfort zone transformed her in profound ways. She discovered hidden reservoirs of strength and resilience, realizing she was capable of far more than she had ever imagined. Her confidence soared, empowering her to take on leadership roles she once thought impossible. Friends and colleagues noticed the change, remarking on how much bolder and more assertive she had become. Richard underwent a similar transformation. Once driven solely by ambition and achievement, he now found fulfillment in acts of service. His interactions with beneficiaries of their programs, single mothers rebuilding their lives, teenagers pursuing dreams they once deemed unattainable, redefined his understanding of success. Money and power, he realized, paled in comparison to the joy of seeing someone smile because of something he had helped create. Yet, not everything was smooth sailing. Tensions occasionally flared between Emma and Richard, particularly when disagreements arose over priorities or approaches. Emma favored grassroots methods, focusing on immediate needs and tangible results. Richard, influenced by his corporate background, leaned toward long-term strategies and scalable solutions. These differences sometimes led to heated discussions, but they ultimately strengthened their partnership. By learning to compromise and appreciate each other's perspectives, they crafted a balanced approach that addressed both short-term crises and systemic issues. Outside their professional endeavors, their personal lives began to intersect in unexpected ways. Richard invited Emma to family gatherings, introducing her to relatives who initially dismissed her as just a cleaning lady. Over time, however, they came to admire her intelligence, humility, and unwavering dedication. Emma, in turn, welcomed Richard into her world, sharing meals with him at her modest apartment and introducing him to friends and neighbors who had supported her through thick and thin. These experiences deepened their bond, fostering a sense of camaraderie that transcended social status. Richard often joked that Emma had taught him more about life than any Ivy League education ever could. Emma laughed along, though secretly, she felt the same about him. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they had forged a connection, rooted in trust, respect, and shared values. By mid-year, their collective impact reached new heights. The safe house expanded its facilities, accommodating twice as many residents as before. Scholarship recipients excelled in their studies, some even securing prestigious internships and job offers. Community health clinics flourished, providing affordable care to thousands of underserved individuals. Local media hailed their achievements, dubbing them changemakers and visionaries. But perhaps the most rewarding aspect of their journey was the ripple effect it created. Inspired by Emma and Richard's example, others began taking action in their own communities. Teachers started mentorship programs for at-risk students. Business owners launched initiatives to hire marginalized workers. Even politicians, swayed by public demand, introduced legislation aimed at addressing inequality and promoting social justice. Through it all, Emma and Richard remained grounded, refusing to let accolades inflate their egos. They knew their work was far from finished. Challenges still loomed: funding gaps, policy roadblocks, societal resistance, but they faced them head-on, armed with the knowledge that every small victory brought them closer to lasting change. As autumn leaves painted the city in hues of gold and crimson, Emma reflected on how far she had come. From a shy cleaning lady hesitant to speak her mind, she had grown into a fearless advocate for justice and equality. Richard, too, marveled at his transformation, from a self-absorbed billionaire to a compassionate champion of the underprivileged. Together, they stood as proof that courage and kindness could overcome even the greatest odds. Little did they know, their story was destined to reach even greater heights. New opportunities awaited them, chances to expand their reach, tackle global issues and inspire millions worldwide. But for now they savored the present, grateful for the journey that had brought them here and eager for whatever lay ahead. Side by side they marched forward, united by a shared vision of a brighter futur. As the years rolled on, Emma and Richard's partnership blossomed into something far greater than either of them could have imagined. Their work together had not only transformed countless lives, but also redefined who they were as individuals. What began as a chance encounter between a billionaire and a cleaning lady had evolved into a movement that inspired hope and action across the globe. By now, their initiatives had expanded beyond local communities to touch international shores. The safe house model Emma helped design became a blueprint for shelters worldwide, replicated in cities from New York to Nairobi. Women escaping abuse found refuge not just in one location, but in dozens scattered across continents. Each facility bore Emma's imprint, her emphasis on dignity, empowerment, and healing woven into its very foundation. Richard played a pivotal role in scaling these efforts, leveraging his wealth and connections to secure funding and resources. He established partnerships with governments, NGOs, and multinational corporations, ensuring sustainability and accountability. Together, he and Emma traveled extensively, visiting project sites, meeting beneficiaries, and learning firsthand about the challenges faced by different cultures and societies. These trips deepened their understanding of global issues and strengthened their commitment to addressing them. One such trip took them to a remote village in India, where they witnessed the devastating impact of child labor and lack of education. Moved by what they saw, they launched a new initiative aimed at providing free schooling and vocational training to underprivileged children. Within months, classrooms sprang up in makeshift buildings, staffed by dedicated teachers eager to make a difference. Parents, once resigned to their children's bleak futures, began dreaming again, dreams of doctors, engineers, and artists emerging from humble beginnings. Back home, their achievements continued to garner attention. Media outlets hailed them as modern-day heroes, spotlighting their unconventional alliance and groundbreaking accomplishments. Documentaries chronicled their journey, capturing candid moments of triumph and struggle. Books were written, detailing how two people from opposite ends of the social spectrum had come together to challenge systemic injustices. Universities invited them to deliver commencement speeches, inspiring graduates to use their talents for good. Yet fame brought its own set of complications. Paparazzi trailed them relentlessly, snapping photos and speculating about the nature of their relationship. Rumors swirled. Is it romantic? Are they secretly related? Neither Emma nor Richard paid much heed to the gossip. They remained steadfastly focused on their mission, letting their actions speak louder than idle chatter. Still, the constant scrutiny sometimes weighed heavily, reminding them of the cost of visibility. Despite these challenges, their bond only grew stronger. Friendship turned into family. Richard often referred to Emma as his sister, while she affectionately called him her brother. They celebrated milestones together, birthdays, holidays, anniversaries of their projects' launches. They mourned losses, too, including the passing of Richard's elderly mother, whom Emma had grown close to during their time together. Through joy and sorrow, they stood side by side, offering unwavering support and love. Their personal growth mirrored their professional success. Emma, once hesitant to step into leadership roles, now commanded boardrooms with ease. She mentored young activists, encouraging them to find their voices and fight for justice. Her speeches resonated globally, earning her invitations to prestigious forums like the United Nations and World Economic Forum. Yet, despite her growing influence, she never lost sight of her roots. She still cleaned houses occasionally, finding solace in the simplicity of scrubbing floors and dusting shelves, a reminder of where she came from. Richard underwent a similar evolution. Once defined by his fortune, he now measured his worth by the smiles he helped create. His transformation was evident in the way he interacted with people. From CEOs to street vendors, he treated everyone with genuine respect and humility. Friends joked that he had become Emma's student, citing his newfound wisdom and compassion. But Richard didn't mind. If anything, he wore the title proudly. Together, they tackled some of the world's most pressing problems: climate change, poverty, gender inequality. They launched campaigns to promote renewable energy, funded research on affordable healthcare solutions, and advocated for policies supporting marginalized groups. Their reach extended to digital platforms, where millions followed their updates and joined their cause. Social media hashtags like Speak Up Like Emma and Change with Richard trended regularly, sparking conversations and driving action. But perhaps their greatest legacy was the ripple effect they created. Inspired by their story, ordinary people around the world began stepping up, realizing they too could make a difference. Teachers organized fundraisers for struggling students. Entrepreneurs hired ex-convicts, giving them second chances. Neighbors formed community groups to tackle local issues. The message was clear. No act of kindness, no matter how small, was insignificant. As decades passed, Emma and Richard grew older, their hair streaked with gray and their steps slower than before. Yet, their spirits remained youthful, fueled by the knowledge that their work would outlive them. Younger generations carried the torch, building on their foundation and expanding their vision. Scholars studied their methods, educators taught their principles, and leaders emulated their values. In their twilight years, they often sat together, reminiscing about the journey that had brought them here. Emma would laugh at the memory of delivering that fateful warning to Richard, marveling at how one bold decision had changed everything. Richard would smile, thanking her yet again for trusting her instincts. "You saved more than my life," he'd say softly. "You saved me from myself." When Emma passed away peacefully in her sleep at the age of 82, the world mourned the loss of a quiet hero who had touched countless lives. Tributes poured in from every corner of the globe, celebrating her courage, humility, and unwavering belief in doing the right thing. Richard delivered her eulogy, his voice trembling with emotion. "Emma taught us all that greatness isn't about titles or riches," he said. "It's about choosing kindness over indifference, action over silence, and love over fear." Richard lived another decade after Emma's passing, dedicating his remaining years to preserving her legacy. He wrote a memoir titled The Cleaning, Lady Who Changed the World, recounting their extraordinary journey and urging readers to follow in Emma's footsteps. On the day of its release, he donated all proceeds to the scholarship fund bearing her name, ensuring her spirit would continue to inspire future generations. When Richard finally joined Emma, leaving behind a world forever shaped by their partnership, their story endured, a testament to the power of courage, empathy, and collaboration. It reminded humanity that even the smallest voices can spark monumental change, proving that true greatness lies not in wealth or status, but in the ability to uplift others. And so Emma and Richard's legacy lived on, a beacon of hope shining brightly through the ages.